Some people appear to move on easily after someone leaves, but in truth, most of us carry invisible threads that keep us connected to those who are no longer in our lives. That person who walked away months or even years ago still appears in your dreams. Their favorite song plays on the radio and suddenly it feels like they're sitting right next to you. These moments aren't signs of weakness. They're the heart's memory functioning exactly as it should. According to Carl Jung, when a significant bond forms between two people, it creates a deep imprint in our unconscious mind that continues to shape us long after the physical relationship ends. This isn't just poetic thinking. It's how our brains actually work. The neural pathways formed during meaningful connections don't simply disappear when someone leaves. They remain active, which is why a certain laugh in a crowded room can stop you in your tracks, making you turn around expecting to see them there. In this video, you'll understand why that person who left still feels present in your emotional landscape. I'll explain why certain songs, places, or even random objects can suddenly make them feel so close it's almost physical, like you could reach out and touch them. You'll discover how your brain processes absence differently when the connection was meaningful, and why these persistent bonds aren't evidence of being stuck but are actually normal responses to significant relationships. Most importantly, you'll learn how these invisible connections reveal important truths about your emotional world, truths that can help you understand yourself better if you know how to listen to them. Stick with me till the end, because understanding these connections might help you stop judging yourself for feelings you can't control. That sense of connection you still feel isn't something to fight against or be embarrassed about. It's actually a window into how your emotional mind works. And by the end of this video, you'll have tools to transform what feels like pain into meaningful insight about your own heart. You'll learn to recognize these feelings not as obstacles to moving forward, but as important parts of your emotional story, parts that deserve to be understood rather than erased. You're not stuck in the past. When you feel connected to someone who's gone, you're experiencing the natural echo of emotional significance. Think about it. Significant relationships literally change the structure of your brain. The neurons that fire together when you're with someone actually wire together, creating pathways that don't just disappear when that person walks away. Those moments when they suddenly come to mind aren't overthinking. They're your mind processing a bond that mattered. Maybe you're at the grocery store and see their favorite snack, or driving past the restaurant where you had that important conversation. Your heart jumps and for a split second it's like they're with you again. This isn't weakness or inability to move on. It's your emotional memory working exactly as it should. What others might label as inability to move on is actually your heart's way of honoring what was real. Our culture often tells us we should just get over it when relationships end, as if meaningful connections are something you can simply switch off. But that's not how our emotional minds work. When meaningful connections end, they don't simply disappear, they change form. The physical presence becomes an internal experience that can feel just as powerful. That's why you might still find yourself mentally telling them about your day, or noticing things they would have found funny. Your brain is following patterns it established when that person was present, and these patterns don't vanish just because the relationship has ended. Carl Jung understood that significant relationships don't end when physical contact does. He saw these lasting connections not as problems to solve, but as important parts of how we develop as people. Jung believed that deep relationships become part of our psychological structure, what he called the soul. Each meaningful connection leaves its mark, changing not just our memories but how we see ourselves in the world. These bonds, when examined with compassion, reveal not just our attachments to others, but also the parts of ourselves that were awakened or changed through knowing another person. That special person who left didn't just take their physical presence away, they left behind a version of you that wouldn't exist if you hadn't known them. When someone significant leaves your life, your mind creates psychological mechanisms to maintain the connection. This isn't just random or sentimental, it's your brain trying to make sense of an important attachment that's changed form. The way certain smells transport you back to moments with them happens because smell is directly connected to the emotional centers of your brain. When you catch yourself noticing things they would have liked, or hearing their voice in your mind offering advice or reaction to something new in your life, these aren't random occurrences. They're your mind preserving what mattered. Behind these experiences lies a profound truth. Meaningful connections transcend physical presence because they literally change who you are. The neural pathways formed during your relationship continue to shape how you experience the world, even after the relationship ends. These persistent feelings don't need to be eliminated. They need to be understood. Fighting against them often makes them stronger and more painful. It's like trying not to think of a pink elephant. The more you try to push the thought away, the more it dominates your mind. When we stop fighting these connections and start listening to what they reveal about our emotional world, something shifts inside. The pain doesn't necessarily disappear, but it changes quality. What once felt like only hurt can transform into a kind of inner knowing, where the connection becomes not a source of suffering but a part of your emotional wisdom. This isn't about clinging to the past. It's about acknowledging how the past has shaped your present and allowing that awareness to help you move forward with more self-understanding. One of the most powerful ways we stay connected to people who've left is through what I call emotional time travel. You're walking through a store when their favorite song starts playing, and suddenly you're not just remembering them. You're emotionally transported back to a specific moment. You can feel the exact temperature of the air, remember what you were wearing, even smell the scents from that day. This isn't just ordinary remembering. It's a full sensory experience that makes the past feel like it's happening right now. And it happens completely without warning. These memory triggers are so powerful because emotionally significant memories are stored differently in your brain than ordinary memories. They're processed through the amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for emotional reactions, which is why they come with such intense physical sensations. You might feel your heart race, your stomach drop, or a wave of warmth wash over you. Your body is literally reacting as if you've been transported back in time. That's why when you walk past a restaurant where you shared an important moment, the emotional memory hits you before you even consciously register why that place matters. These emotional flashbacks are especially common with sensory triggers. A particular cologne at the mall, the way light falls through trees on a certain kind of afternoon, or a specific song that played during an important moment. These sensory experiences bypass your rational mind and activate emotional memory directly. This happens because sensory information travels on a faster neural pathway than conscious thought. You feel the emotion before you even have time to prepare for it or put up defenses. That's why these moments can feel so overwhelming. They catch your emotional mind completely off guard. What's fascinating is how selective these emotional memories are. Your brain doesn't store every detail of your relationship. It specifically preserves the emotionally significant moments. Think about how clearly you can remember certain conversations word for word, while entire weeks might be completely forgotten. Your brain takes emotional snapshots, preserving what mattered most. That's why you might have crystal clear recall of the exact way they laughed at a particular joke, the precise words they used when they said something meaningful, or the exact feeling of a specific embrace, while forgetting many ordinary interactions. Many people try to avoid these emotional time travel moments because they can be painful. They'll change the radio station when certain songs come on, avoid restaurants or places they used to go together, or try to suppress memories when they surface. But fighting against these experiences often makes them more powerful and disruptive. When you resist emotional time travel, you're telling your brain this is something dangerous that needs to be avoided, which actually strengthens the emotional charge of the memory. There's another approach that can transform how you experience these moments. Instead of treating them as unwanted intrusions, you can see them as gifts, windows into parts of your emotional life that mattered deeply. When that song plays and you feel yourself being pulled back, try staying present with the experience. Notice the physical sensations in your body. Acknowledge the emotions that arise. These aren't obstacles to moving on. They're parts of your emotional history, revealing themselves to you. Over time, this approach can change your relationship with these emotional time travel moments. They won't necessarily stop happening. Significant emotional memories don't just disappear, but they can shift from being painful ambushes to meaningful reconnections with important parts of your history. The intensity generally decreases with time and awareness. What once felt like being thrown underwater might eventually feel more like a gentle wave of recognition, still moving, but no longer overwhelming. The connection remains, but your relationship to it transforms. Another powerful way we stay connected to people who are no longer in our lives is through ongoing internal conversations. You see something funny and think, she would have loved this. You face a difficult decision and hear his voice in your mind saying exactly what he would say. You mentally rehearse telling them about your day, even though you know you won't actually. get to share it. These internal dialogues aren't signs of delusion. They're your mind's natural way of maintaining a connection that was important to you. These conversations happen because your brain created detailed internal models of significant people in your life. Through countless interactions, you learned their speech patterns, values, sense of humor, and how they might respond in different situations. Your brain didn't delete this information when they left. Instead, this internal model continues to function, allowing you to predict with surprising accuracy what they might say or how they might react to new situations in your life. That's why their imagined responses can feel so authentic. They're based on a rich database of actual interactions your brain has cataloged and preserved. What's interesting is how these internal conversations evolve over time. Right after someone leaves, they might center around what went wrong, things you wish you'd said, or imaginary reconciliations. But as time passes, they often shift to include new experiences they were never part of. You might show them your new apartment, tell them about your promotion, or ask their advice about situations they'll never know about. This isn't denial. It's your psyche's way of integrating your continuing life with a significant attachment that shaped you. Many people feel guilty about these internal dialogues, as if having them means they're not moving on. But trying to silence these conversations often backfires. The more you try to stop thinking about someone, the more persistently they appear in your thoughts. Instead of fighting these internal conversations, you can approach them with curiosity. What function are they serving for you right now? What needs are being met through this ongoing internal connection? Sometimes they're providing comfort, sometimes guidance, sometimes just a sense of continuity in your life story. The goal isn't to eliminate these internal conversations, but to become more conscious of them. When you notice yourself in dialogue with someone who's gone, you can acknowledge it without judgment. I'm having an internal conversation with them again. This simple awareness creates space between you and the experience, allowing you to see it as one of many ways your mind processes significant relationships, rather than something to fight against or feel ashamed about. One of the most startling ways we stay connected to someone who's left is through recognition in strangers. You're walking down the street when you spot someone with the same walk, the same haircut, or wearing a similar style. Your heart jumps before your rational mind catches up and realizes it's not actually them. Or maybe you hear a laugh in a crowded coffee shop that sounds exactly like theirs, and you spin around, half expecting to see them there. This isn't your mind playing tricks on you. It's your brain's pattern recognition system at work. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment for familiar patterns, especially ones with emotional significance. When you spent significant time with someone, your neural pathways became highly sensitized to their specific features, the way they move, their voice, even the shape of their hands or back of their head. These pathways don't just deactivate when the relationship ends. They remain alert, causing your brain to quickly respond to anything remotely similar. That's why your body often reacts before your conscious mind does, your heart racing or stomach dropping at the sight of someone who, when you look more carefully, barely resembles the person you know. What's fascinating is how specific these recognitions can be. It might be a particular gesture, the way someone pushes their hair back or adjusts their glasses. It could be a tone of voice or phrase that catches you off guard. These tiny details trigger powerful emotional responses because they're connected to the unique neural signature of your relationship. Your brain isn't confused. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do, quickly identifying patterns that mattered to your emotional survival. These moments of recognition can feel both unsettling and strangely comforting. There's the initial jolt of thinking they're somehow here, followed by the letdown of realizing they're not. But there's also something revealing about what specific traits your mind is still holding on to. Are you noticing their physical characteristics, their mannerisms, their way of interacting with others? What your brain flags as significant tells you something about what aspects of this person made the deepest impression on you. Rather than being frustrated by these mistaken recognitions, you can use them as windows into understanding your connection. Each time you notice yourself having this reaction, it's an opportunity to observe what specific qualities you're responding to. Over time, this awareness can help you understand the unique signature this relationship left on your emotional mind. Not to erase it, but to integrate it more consciously into your ongoing life story. Perhaps the most mysterious way we maintain connections with people who have left is through our dreams. You might go days or weeks without consciously thinking about them. Then, Suddenly, they appear in your dreams, sometimes years after they've gone. These dream encounters often feel incredibly vivid and real. The sound of their voice, the feeling of their embrace, the details of their face, all perfectly captured. You might wake up feeling like you've actually spent time with them, with emotions that linger throughout your day. This isn't random. It's your unconscious mind processing a connection that remains active below the surface of your awareness. Dreams have direct access to emotional memory in ways your waking mind doesn't. During sleep, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logical thinking and emotional regulation, becomes less active. Meanwhile, the limbic system, which processes emotions and memories, remains highly active. This creates the perfect conditions for emotional connections to surface without the filters and defenses of your conscious mind. That's why someone you've tried not to think about while awake can appear so vividly in your dreams. Your unconscious isn't bound by the same restrictions you place on your conscious thoughts. Carl Jung believed these dream connections weren't just random replays of memory, but meaningful communications from your unconscious. He saw dreams as the psyche's attempt to bring awareness to emotions and attachments that haven't been fully processed during waking hours. When someone keeps appearing in your dreams, it might be your unconscious signaling that there's still emotional material connected to this relationship that needs your attention. The specific scenarios that play out in these dreams often contain symbolic messages about your relationship to this person and what the connection continues to mean in your life. What's striking is how these dream encounters can feel more real and emotionally immediate than waking memories. You might have a dream conversation that feels more authentic and meaningful than any actual interaction you had when the relationship was active. In the dream space, connections often cut through the surface details and touch the emotional core of the relationship. This is why you might wake up with such powerful feelings. The dream has contacted a deeper layer of your connection than your waking mind usually accesses. Instead of dismissing these dreams or feeling upset by them, you can approach them as messages from parts of yourself that are still processing this connection. Keep a dream journal by your bed and write down these dreams as soon as you wake up, before they fade. Look for patterns in when they occur and what happens in them. Are you resolving unfinished business? Are you experiencing a different kind of relationship than you had in reality? These patterns can reveal what your unconscious is still working to understand or integrate about this connection. One of the most subtle ways we stay connected to someone who's left is through what I call the invisible anniversary effect. You might wake up feeling unusually sad, irritable, or anxious without knowing why. Only later do you realize it's the anniversary of meeting them, your first date, or the day they left. Your conscious mind might have forgotten the significance of April 18th or September 3rd, but your body and emotional brain remember. This isn't superstition or coincidence. It's your emotional memory operating on its own calendar. Our bodies keep time in ways we don't consciously track. Research has shown that significant emotional events create what psychologists call anniversary reactions. Your nervous system literally remembers and reacts to important dates. Even when your conscious mind doesn't make the connection, your body might start producing stress hormones. Your sleep patterns might change, or your mood might shift as the date approaches. It's as if your emotional brain has its own calendar that marks these anniversaries, whether you consciously acknowledge them or not. What's fascinating is how precise this emotional timekeeping can be. It's not just about the day itself. You might notice changes in your mood or energy level in the weeks leading up to significant dates. Some people find themselves becoming withdrawn or emotional at the same time each year without making the connection to past events. The body's memory is often tied to seasonal cues too. The quality of light, temperature changes, or even holiday music can trigger anniversary reactions before you consciously register why these environmental signals matter. This invisible anniversary effect often catches people off guard because it seems to come from nowhere. You might find yourself thinking about them more frequently, or having dreams about them without realizing a significant date is approaching. Or you might feel an inexplicable heaviness that lifts once the date passes. These reactions aren't signs of weakness or evidence that you're not over it. They're normal responses to the way emotional memories are stored and processed in your brain and body. When you start to recognize these patterns, you gain the ability to work with them rather than being controlled by them. Marking your calendar with significant dates related to the relationship can help you anticipate these reactions. When you notice yourself feeling unusually emotional, you can check whether it corresponds to an anniversary. This awareness doesn't stop the feelings, but it gives them context. I'm not falling apart for no reason. My body is remembering something significant. Some people find it helpful to create simple rituals around these dates, not to dwell in the past, but to acknowledge the ongoing impact of significant relationships. This might mean taking a quiet walk, writing in a journal, or simply pausing to recognize that this connection continues to be part of your emotional landscape. By consciously acknowledging these anniversaries, you bring what's operating in your unconscious into awareness, which often helps reduce their disruptive power over time. These persistent connections aren't signs of emotional weakness. They're evidence of your capacity for meaningful attachment. The fact that someone continues to affect you even after they're gone doesn't mean you're stuck or failing to move on. It means you experienced a connection that genuinely mattered, one that changed you in ways that continue to be part of who you are. Carl Jung recognized that significant relationships become part of our psychological DNA. He understood that meaningful connections don't simply vanish when physical presence ends. They transform into internal experiences that continue to shape us. What feels like inability to let go is often your psyche's way of preserving what transformed you. Those songs that still make your heart jump, those dreams where they appear so vividly, those moments when you catch yourself thinking about what they would say. These aren't obstacles to overcome. They're your emotional mind honoring what was real between you. What seems like dwelling in the past is actually your heart's intelligence, recognizing that significant connections don't just disappear because circumstances change. They become woven into the fabric of who you are. Healing doesn't mean erasing these connections. It means bringing them into conscious awareness. It's the difference between being controlled by an invisible force and recognizing that force as a meaningful part of your story. When you stop fighting against these persistent bonds and start listening to what they tell you about yourself, something shifts. The pain doesn't necessarily disappear overnight, but it begins to transform. It becomes less of an open wound and more of a meaningful chapter in your life story. The process of truly knowing yourself includes understanding how others have shaped your inner landscape. Every significant relationship leaves its mark on you, not just in your memories, but in how you see the world, what you value, how you approach new connections. Even relationships that ended painfully often gave you gifts, greater self-knowledge, important lessons, new perspectives. When you acknowledge these gifts alongside the loss, you begin to see the complete picture of how this connection changed you. When these bonds are acknowledged with compassion, they stop controlling your emotions and become integrated parts of your story. This doesn't happen all at once. It's a gradual process of bringing unconscious attachments into conscious awareness. You might still feel the pull of connection when certain songs play or dates approach, but these experiences become less disruptive and more meaningful. They become reminders of your capacity for connection rather than evidence of your inability to move on. The connection doesn't disappear, but transforms from an active wound into a meaningful chapter in the story of your heart. It becomes something you can acknowledge without being overwhelmed by it, something you can carry with you without being weighed down. This transformation isn't about forgetting or pretending the connection didn't matter. It's about allowing it to find its proper place in your life story, not dominating your present, but acknowledged as part of what made you who you are today. If you found yourself nodding along with this video, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. For more insights about emotional healing and understanding, the path of understanding our deepest connections isn't always easy, but it's one of the most rewarding journeys we can take, and I'd love to continue sharing that journey with you. If you stayed until the end of this video, leave a comment saying, "I honor my connections," to let me know this resonated with you. Your comment will remind others watching that they're not alone in experiencing these lasting bonds, and that there's strength in acknowledging them rather than fighting against them. Share this video with someone who might need permission to honor their own lasting connections without judgment. In a world that often tells us to just move on, sometimes the greatest gift we can give each other is understanding that meaningful connections leave lasting imprints. And that's not weakness. It's one of the most profound expressions of what makes us human. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring the depths of the heart and the wisdom it holds, even in its wounds.